It's time for the news.
The government has examined during its weekly meeting chaired by Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman a draft executive decree aimed at simplifying administrative procedures for the benefit of construction companies in the housing sector. Civil protection teams in the flood-hit Libyan city of Derna have managed to remove 5 lifeless bodies from the rubble as rescue and search operations are continuing in the Libyan city devastated by Storm Danielle. And a ceasefire agreement was reached on Thursday in Ain al-Hilwa Palestinian camp located near the southern Lebanese city of Sidon after clashes claimed about 20 lives there during the past week. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has made a technical stopover in Algiers. The Venezuelan president was welcomed upon his arrival at Houari Boumediene International Airport on Thursday by Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman. President Maduro arrived in Algiers from China, where he had paid a state visit at the invitation of his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping. The government has examined during its weekly meeting chaired by Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman a draft executive decree aimed at simplifying administrative procedures for the benefit of construction companies in the housing sector. A press release from the Prime Minister's office indicated that the Minister of Housing, Urban Planning and the City presented during the meeting a draft executive decree modifying and supplementing Executive Decree number 14139 of April 20th, 2014, establishing obligations for companies, holdings and consortiums operating in certain sectors of activity to hold a certificate of professional qualification and classification according to the same source. Trade Minister Tayyip Zitouni started a working visit to Tunisia, where he is co-chairing the 5th session of the Algerian-Tunisian Joint Commission for the Monitoring of Trade. The visit of Mr. Zitouni is part of the development and strengthening of relations between Algeria and Tunisia. The 5th session of the Algerian-Tunisian Commission for Monitoring Trade is to be co-chaired with his Tunisian counterpart, Mr. Khaltoun or Mr. Kaltoum, or Mrs. Kaltoum bin Rajab. The session will focus on the search for ways to develop bilateral trade and economic relations. The meeting will also provide an opportunity to speed up efforts and a way to develop relations between the institutions and bodies of the two countries in terms of developing commercial exchanges, in addition to strengthening consultation and coordination with a view to achieving bilateral economic integration. The President of the Shura Council of the Sultanate of Oman, Sheikh Khalid bin Hilal bin Nasser Al Mawli, has started a 6-day visit to Algeria. He was welcomed at the Houari Boumediene International Airport by the President of the National People's Assembly, Mr. Ibrahim Boughali. In the airport's VIP lounge, Mr. Boughali held talks with his Omani host on the importance of this visit and the results that will be achieved in the interest of the solid brotherly relations linking the two countries. The Minister of Justice, Abdelmajid Tabi, has received the Vietnamese Deputy Minister of Justice, Nguyen Can Ngos, and the accompanying delegation. The meeting was marked by talks between executives from the Ministries of Justice of the two countries, and the signing of the cooperation program for 2024-2025 in the presence of the ambassador of Vietnam to Algiers, Trade Quoc Khan. The meeting was part of the Vietnamese officials' visit to Algeria due to wind up today with the aim of strengthening legal and judicial cooperation between the Ministries of Justice of the two countries, particularly in terms of training and exchange of knowledge and expertise. To the Libyan file now, where civil protection teams in flood-hit Libyan city of Derna have managed, or the Algerian civil protection teams in flood-hit Libyan city of Derna have managed to remove 5 lifeless bodies from the rubble as part of their solidarity mission following the devastating disaster which recently hit the neighboring country. Jamal Salmani has more details.
The communication officer of the General Directorate of Civil Protection told the press that the civil protection teams who went to Libya to participate in rescue and aid operations after the devastating floods which affected the country began the work early Thursday in Derna, where they managed to remove the bodies of 3 men and 2 women from the rubble. The same official added that conditions are catastrophic in the city due to the damage caused by Storm Danielle, adding that the Algerian rescue team has all the necessary means to carry out search operations both under the rubble and in the stagnant water and mud. Algeria's top authorities had ordered the sending of civil protection teams to Libya as a show of solidarity with the brotherly Libyan people to participate in rescue and aid operations. According to the same services, the team is made up of 113 civil protection agents, all ranks and specialties combined, including divers, a medical team specialized in disaster medicine, an operations management team, search and rescue teams, canine teams, logistics teams, and psychologists. The team is endowed with special equipment of intervention in case of floods. The provisional toll from these torrential rains and floods has exceeded 5,000 deaths, while thousands of people are still reported missing.
Still in Libya, the United Nations aid chief said on Friday that Libya needed equipment to find people trapped in sludge and damaged buildings after floods that have killed thousands of people, as well as primary health care to prevent a cholera outbreak among survivors. Jamal Silmani again.
Martin Griffiths told the UN briefing in Geneva that priority areas are shelter, food, key primary medical care because of the worry of cholera, the worry of lack of clean water. He said the UN Humanitarian Office had sent a disaster coordination team of 15 people to Libya who had been redeployed from Morocco, which suffered an earthquake last week. Swaths of Darna, the center point of the distraction in the country's east, were obliterated by flooding on Sunday night, bringing down whole buildings while families were asleep. Griffith said that a suggestion by the mayor of Derna to create a maritime corridor to deliver aid could be a viable option given that the city is on the Mediterranean Sea. The death toll in Libya's coastal city of Derna has soared to 11,300 as search efforts continue following a massive flood fed by the breaching of 2 dams in heavy rains, the Libyan Red Crescent said. Health authorities previously put the death toll in Derna at 5,500. The storm also killed about 170 people elsewhere in the country. The mayor of Derna, Abdelmunaim El Ghaithi, said the tally could climb to 20,000 given the number of neighborhoods that were washed out.
To the Middle East now, where the ceasefire agreement was reached on Thursday in Ain al-Hilwa Palestinian camp, located near the southern Lebanese city of Sidon, after clashes claimed about 20 lives during the past week. The ceasefire was the culmination of a day-long talks initiated by Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri. Not very far from Lebanon in Palestine, 4 Palestinians have been injured by Israeli gunfire and dozens suffocated from tear gas as Zionist occupation forces attacked a non-violent anti-settlement march in the village of Qaryut in the northern West Bank, Governorate of Nablus. This came as the Israeli occupation forces closed the Qalandiya checkpoint located on the main road connecting occupied Al-Quds with Ramallah and the north of the West Bank, blocking the movement of Palestinian vehicles and civilians. It's worth noting that the Israeli occupation authorities decided this week to seal off the West Bank, including Al-Quds, and to close the border crossings with the Gaza Strip under the pretext of Jewish holidays. The Kremlin has said no agreements have been signed during North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's ongoing visit to Russia, amid concern in Washington that the two countries could be preparing an arms deal. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters that no agreements were signed and there was no plan to sign any. Kim began his visit to Russia on Tuesday. And finally, the number of Nipah virus cases in India's southern state of Kerala has risen to 6, including 2 deaths. According to an official of the State of Health Department, 2 new cases were also confirmed. This was the 4th outbreak of the deadly virus in Kerala in the past few years, after that of 2018, 2019 and 2021. Indian Council of Medical Research Director was quoted by media as saying that the mortality rate of the virus was high and goes beyond 75%. With this, we come to the end of this news bulletin for today. Time now for our weekly programs with my colleague Jamal Silmani and Asya Bakar. As for me, I'll meet you again tomorrow. Thank you.
في طريقي غريب مسافر حب يشوف زين الطبيعة والمنظر مدينة لمدينة داير.
Welcome to your weekly program, Destination Algeria. I'm Jamal Silmani. There are a number of great destinations in Algeria just waiting to be discovered. A curious mixture of cultures and influences. Algeria has something interesting to see in just about every city. The country is also the first largest on the African continent, so you can be sure that there are plenty of towns and cities to visit. Let's visit Algeria's fascinating destinations, you and I, together. There are a number of delightful little towns in Algeria that are well worth visiting. One of the lovely coastal towns you might want to know more about is that of Delis. The rich and fascinating history of Delis in Algeria can be traced back all the way to Roman times. In fact, it can still be seen in the form of a 2nd century Roman ruin that is found near the northern entrance of the old city. Many of the other Roman artifacts found in Delis were taken to other countries and displayed in museums many years ago. Even in Roman times, Delis quickly became a powerful and influential city. It is thought that this original city was destroyed by either an earthquake or an invasion. Either way, the city was then rebuilt by the Arabs who moved to the region for political reasons. During this time, it was called Tidlis. Many centuries later, it was taken over by the Turks and became a part of the Ottoman Empire. During this time, there were many different tribes and peoples living in Delis, and the city continued to prosper. According to Juan Battista Montalbano, an 18th century Italian philologist, Delis was a very prosperous port that was home to a number of rich families. He attributed this wealth mainly to the area's wool and flax dyeing resources. The city went on to become a popular holiday city, with many entertainment and sporting facilities being built. After many years of sovereign rule, Algeria finally took control of its own cities and towns, and so Delis finally became a truly Algerian city. Today, Delis in Algeria is filled with interesting ruins, relics and artifacts. Its diverse history has given it great appeal, while its striking coastal setting and colorful sunsets just cannot be ignored. The Ottoman-era Kasbah is a popular attraction, while the two colonial-era lighthouses continue to stand tall, indicating to ships where they should sail in order to safely make berth at the small port. Farming and fishing continue to be prominent activities here, and there is a distinctly industrious but relaxed feeling in the city. If you feel you'd like to see this town, you'll discover it to be a rich treasure trove of lovely sights.
في طريقي غريب مسافر حبي يشوف زين الطبيعة والمنظر مدينة لمدينة داير.
Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. This is our second part of your program, Destination Algeria. Looking for something interesting to do while you're visiting Algeria? You might find that a trip to Oued El Abiod will amaze and excite you. This great topographical attraction boggles the mind and gives you an immense appreciation for the wonders of nature. Wadi Al Abyad in Algeria might easily be called the Gorges in English. These incredible natural wonders were beautifully carved out of the soft Ouras mountains by seasonal rivers over the course of millions of years. Each portion of the Gorges is unique and inspiring, and it is worth exploring all aspects of them to get the full impression of this great natural attraction. Visitors to Wadi Al Abyad will usually approach via National 3 or National 31, depending on whether they are arriving from the north or south of the country. Many visitors will simply pass by without even realizing that such a great natural wonder lies close by. If you are planning to pass through the area between Betna and Biskra, make sure you take your time and try to avoid public transport, which will overshoot the area, resulting in you missing out on this great attraction in Algeria. Most visitors start their exploration of Wadi Al Abyad in the village of Roufi, which is the easiest place from which to reach the gorge of Tiranimim. Roufi is located about 90 kilometers from Betna and has a reputation for busy vendors enthusiastically trading goat hair carpets. However, far from impressive is the Roufi balcony, from where you can gain your first glimpse at the impressive Wadi Al Abyad gorges you will be exploring from high above. After venturing through the village and setting out for the gorges, you will find the walk on foot very pleasant, as a palm-sided river bed accompanies you on your trek. Steep hillsides and the little river keep you cool even in summer. Little villages do the route and can be explored as you make your way along. If you travel in a southerly direction, you should reach the Benyan Oasis by lunchtime and the beautiful Mshumish Oasis by the end of the day. You can choose how long you want to spend walking Wadi Al Abyad in Algeria, but if you walk the whole way, it will take you 3 to 4 days. Visitors should keep in mind that the area is fairly rural and there isn't much in the way of accommodation, although you should find nice enough facilities at some of the bigger pit stops along the way. For that reason, you should take your own camping equipment, food and bedding, although you shouldn't have to carry too much, as supplies can usually be purchased along the way.
زينة 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 أرض بلادي زينة 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 أرض جدادي مرحبا بالضيف لي جا زارنا زارنا أرض بلادي مرحبا بالضيف لي جا زارنا زارنا أرض جدادي.
A story in an artwork. A weekly program that tells stories flavored with art.
Shabi or popular music in Algeria can be translated as Algerian portraits.
Yeah, Algerian portraits. It's about profile.
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to our program, A Story in an Artwork. Today, we're going to talk about the novel and bestseller What the Day Owes the Night by Yasmina Khadra. The novel What the Day Owes the Night tells the story of Yunus and his daily life as a little boy, then as a young man, and finally as a mature man in an Algeria torn by passions and war. At the beginning of the novel, we are in 1930. Yunus was only 9 years old when he saw his father's fields ablaze just a few days before the harvest. He sees his father cry for the first time, and the family have to give up the land of their ancestors and leave. They go to settle in Oran in the miserable district back then of Jnan Jatu, and the father, full of courage, is quick to find a job and sweat hardly to win his bread and feed his family. There, young Yunus discovers both the inevitable misery his family is destined to go through, but also the hope that energizes the inhabitants of the patio. But nothing goes as planned, and bad luck seems to be hitting the family, especially since the very proud father refuses any kind of financial help from others. His difficult conditions, however, make him give up his pride and trust young Yunus with his brother. The uncle of Yunus was in better financial situation as he was a pharmacist. He was even married to a French woman. Both have no children and consider Yunus as their own son and ensure his education while taking good care of him. Yunus, however, never sees his family again, as he says in this passage. I never saw my mother or my sister again. I do not know what has become of them, if they are still of this world or if they are nothing more than dust among the dust. But I saw my father several times, about every 10 years, sometimes in the middle of a souk or market, or on a building site, sometimes alone, at the corner of a street or on the steps of an abandoned shed. I never succeeded to approach him. I had come to understand that he was not flesh and blood. His new environment starts to call him Jonas, European for Yunus, and the young boy lives divided between his Algerian origins and his French education and environment, just like his name, Jonas and Yunus. His uncle gets arrested by French colonial authorities because of his intellectual solidarity with the Algerian national cause, which was then spreading in the literate circles of the city. When he gets released, he will never be the same again, and the family moves outside the city to Rio Salado, now El Maleh. Yunus, or now Jonas, gradually makes friends there and integrate himself into the city's Romis or European community. He lives happy days with his friends who became indispensable to him. They are called Simon, Jean-Christophe, and Fabrice. They share their dreams of privileged teenagers and watch from afar the arrival of World War II and the rise of Algerian nationalism. And of course, as teenagers, they are also interested in girls. It is Emily, an exceptional, pretty young woman whom Yunus knew when he was younger, who creates division among the friends who are now grown-ups. She comes back to settle in the village and gets admired by all of Yunus' friends, but it is him that she loves. He loves her back, but because of a promise he made to Emily's mother, with whom he had a very brief affair. He cannot give in to loving Emily, who eventually marries Simon, his friend. Yunus also does not want to betray his friends, which makes him suffer all his life and feel alone and misunderstood. The struggle of Algeria for independence invades the heart of Yunus when he is unable to commit and take a side. He feels the urge to help his people, but he does not get involved. In a war for freedom, colonial Algeria lives its last moments, and while the three fronts tear each other apart for the love of a woman, Emily, the two peoples, Algerians and French, fight for a country that everyone loves madly, as the author says in this passage. It was predictable. There was a people lying on the ground on which you walked as if on grass. It was clear that one day or another they would stand again on their feet. As for Emily, her husband Simon dies during the Algerian Revolution, and she leaves to France, leaving behind her life in Algeria and her love for Yunus, who comes to a decision to be with Emily when it's too late, as we understand from this passage. Whoever misses the most beautiful story of his life will only be regretful, and all the sighs of the world cannot sway his soul. In What the Day Owes the Night's novel, Yasmina Khadra doesn't only tell a story, but also shares with the reader through his characters quotes on love, life, humanity, and inner struggle. It is also a book full of wisdom, where a lot of things are said between the lines. The novel also shows life of colonial Algeria from 1930 to 1962, during which Algerians were either marginalized or submitted to the French culture, but in both cases they were subject to racism on their own soil. In literary terms, Yunus or Jonas can seem enigmatic. He seems to live his life as a spectator and follows his destiny as if his life was mapped out by others. Quote, "Though there are things beyond our understanding, for the most part we are the architects of our own unhappiness." Unquote. Yunus may also be a symbol of the colonized people who tried to fit in the world imposed by the colonizer but could never surpass their origins. In addition to becoming a bestseller, What the Day Owes the Night won several awards, among which were Best Book of the Year by Lire magazine in 2008, the France Television Award, and the Berlin International Literature Award in 2010. The novel was also brought to the screen by Alexander Arkady in 2012, and the movie was a success as well. And though it was not 100% faithful to the novel, it made the story of Yunus and the name of Yasmina Khadra known worldwide.
Yunus! Yunus!
Je me souviendrai toujours de cette nuit affreuse.